Hello, everybody. It's Mat Kaplan from the Planetary Society here in your member community. Thanks for joining us on this late evening in October. We are in one of the most amazing spots on Earth. We are under the dome on Mount Wilson, where behind me, I should say, in this shot, is the bottom end, the mirror end, of what was, for a few years, beginning in 1908, the biggest telescope on Earth, the 60-inch telescope built by George Ellery Hale. And I think we're good there. Thank you. Was there a problem? Anyway, I hope that you're hearing us. I see that we've got a bunch of people joining in. Thank you for being part of this tonight. This is easily the most ambitious thing we've tried in the member community from a remote location. We are high above Southern California. What, about 5,300 feet, my watch said?
5,700.
5,700 feet, about a mile up above any clouds, or, well, we're hoping there are no clouds tonight. And it actually is a pretty good night for observing here with the 60-inch telescope. If I'm right, and I'm going to turn to the gentleman that you see over here, I remember hearing that this was, and maybe still is, the biggest telescope in the world that you can still look through an eyepiece directly with your eye and see those photons coming from across the cosmos.
Well, that was right for a brief moment.
Oh.
But then the 100-inch next door, this was so popular that we turned the 100-inch next door to be able to do the same thing. And recently, Lick Observatory did an experiment with their 120-inch Shane telescope where they tried an eyepiece at the bottom of it. And I don't know what happened with it. I don't know if it was just a one-night thing and that's it, because the Shane telescope's still actively doing research. The reason why we converted ours to do this is we moved away from research altogether.
So let me introduce this guy. This is Geo. This is Geo Somoza. And I think I got to make sure I'm looking into the right camera here. Geo is many, many things. One of them is one of the longtime leaders of the Planetary Society Volunteers in Southern California. But he is an amateur astronomer extraordinaire. We'll meet a couple of others in the time that we spend here under the dome this evening. And I mean, we could spend the whole time talking about all your different jobs. You were with us at the Eclipsorama in Texas last April. We had a blast. You were doing the same thing there, right? Letting people look through telescopes.
Yeah, I brought my telescopes. I drove across country just so I can bring all my telescopes, and it was great to be within a community that everybody appreciated what we were doing there, and it was just an amazing weekend to spend with members. And just I've been to many eclipses throughout the last 20 years, and this was different. Being with family, being with friends, being with like-minded individuals who just shared your passion, and it was really great. And I got to be on stage with you, which I wasn't expecting. I'm off in the corner setting up a telescope, and then I'm like, I pulled
you up. I know.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I'll talk, and it was great.
We had a blast. We had, I don't know, I think there were about 800 people.
About 800 people together hanging out with us, yeah.
And all kinds of great activities. Hey, lean in here a little bit to this nice microphone. You love to share your love of the cosmos. You did it for a long time at Griffith Observatory. You were a telescope operator there, right? Among other things.
Still work there, yeah.
And now you're here. I mean, a few minutes ago, I was standing behind you over at the control panel, getting us set up for what's happening here tonight. I would say it's luck, but it's not. You've earned this, but you get to have fun with giant instruments like this.
Yeah, so my specialty is operating these rare antique telescopes. So at Griffith, I operate the 12-inch telescope, which is the most view-through telescope on planet Earth.
The one at the observatory,
the
refractor?
Observatory on the roof.
Yeah.
It has close to 9 million people that have looked through that one telescope over the past 90 years.
Including me.
Including you. Behind us right now, the 60-inch, this is the telescope that essentially discovered the Milky Way galaxy, among many other things. And then next door, I operate the 100-inch, which discovered the universe. And then I am very fortunate I get to do this for a living and hang out and do science most of my life.
So when you say that this telescope, this 60-inch mirror, discovered the Milky Way galaxy, you mean that that's when we realized, oh my God, we're in one of those big spiral things?
Well, you got to remember that 100 years ago, to the best of our knowledge, the whole Milky Way galaxy was the universe. And 100 years ago, we thought that our whole universe was only 30,000 light years across.
They thought Andromeda was just a cloud in
Inside.
our galaxy.
Exactly. It was like, I think they called them island universe or island something.
Yeah.
So
I know islands there.
Yeah.
Not Gilligan, but yeah. Okay.
Well, it's further than a 3-hour tour. So you definitely, that was discovered here, by the way. I think what really happened here is we began to measure globular clusters. Globular clusters, and we're going to look at a few of them tonight. Globular clusters are these collections of ancient stars, some of the very first stars that switched on in our universe. And as we began to get the distances to all these objects, thanks to Henrietta Swan-Leavitt's method of, the brightness detection.
Yeah.
She's
using the variables,
right? Measurement of a star. And so using her method, we began to get the distances to thousands and thousands of objects. Prior to Mount Wilson operating here, we only knew the distance to 60 objects, and that's through the use of parallax, the parallax process. Mount Wilson began using Henrietta Swan-Leavitt's method, and we began to get the distance to thousands of objects. So as we measured the 160 clusters that are orbiting us, we noticed many of them were further than the known universe at the time. Remember, it's only supposed to be 30,000 light years across. And then meanwhile, we're finding some of these globular clusters are much further away than that. And then as we measured the distance to all these 160 clusters, we realized, hey, they're all orbiting this point over here that now we call Sagittarius Star A, the center of our Milky Way galaxy.
Yeah.
They're not orbiting Earth. We're not the center of the universe. Yet again, we find out.
Over and over. We get farther and farther from the center.
Exactly. So this is the telescope that discovered the size of the Milky Way galaxy, the point that all the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and how we're actually a quarter of the way from the edge of our own galaxy. So this is the telescope that found our place in space.
Your place in space, as the boss likes to say. The first thing that you pointed this big scope at tonight was the star Vega. You mentioned its special guest starring role in the book and the movie Contact. But you said that this telescope revealed something for the first time about that star.
Well, it wasn't this telescope. It was here at Mount Wilson Observatory using the 100-inch telescope.
Oh, that was the 100 as well.
That was
okay.
the 100.
Okay.
We actually attached mirrors and started doing interferometry with the 100-inch. And we were finally able to measure the diameter of big stars. And so using the 100-inch telescope next door, we finally measured the diameter of Vega and realized that it's actually 2.5 times bigger than our sun. It's burning twice as hot as our sun. It's I like calling it, we're in Hollywood and got the Hollywood sign way off in the distance. And so many tourists come here and they're like, hey, I want to see a star. And I say, hey, got to see this. This one's a hot young star. Because Vega is estimated to only be between 800 and 900 million years old. But because it's living that rock style, actor life, whatever you want to call it, where it's burning its fuel so fast, it's already halfway through its life, and it's only about 800, 900 million years old.
That's
so it's
pretty
a hot young
yeah.
star.
So what I believe I was told is that maybe the star of the evening is not a star, it's the ring planet. Are we going to be looking at Saturn?
We are going to be looking at Saturn. I'm going to, I know we got some other stuff to do, and normally I wouldn't go to Saturn till 11 o'clock, and we'll probably go to Saturn at 11 o'clock for us later on, so it's at a higher area, more stable air. But for us, I'll see if I can get to it early. And
that'd be great.
Early.
Yeah, because I don't know
if we're going to be a little blurry because it's really low to the horizon.
I'll settle for it.
A blurry Saturn is better than no Saturn.
Yeah, especially through a 60-inch telescope.
Exactly.
Just one more question for you right now, Geo, because then you are, I hope, going to take one of our cameras and held it up to that giant eyepiece. Hey, you brought some great props. Show us that eyepiece. Can you reach it?
Sure.
This is just amazing.
So most eyepieces you know, you're talking about 1.25" eyepieces,
Yeah.
and then if you're fortunate enough to afford it, you go to 2-inch eyepieces. Well,
Hold
we
that
have
thing up.
custom, I mean, as big as my head, 4-inch custom-made eyepieces, and so this is what we're using to see it, and you get a much better view when you can see through this big piece of glass.
Absolutely incredible. All right, so what's happening? We've got a bunch of folks around us, a few Planetary Society members, I'm happy to say. What's happening here tonight, and how does this fit into what takes place up here on the mountain?
Well, we try to have fun up here, and this was just one of those nights that I just asked my friends to come up and hang out with me, and many of them said, we'll be there. And so we organized a potluck, so we have way more food than we need up here. I don't know what we're going to do with all this food. We did a tour of the grounds and learned about the history of the observatory, and just something that we don't often get to do. Spend practically, you know, half the afternoon up here, and then now spend half the evening looking through the telescope.
Great opportunity, and people can do this, right? There are regular opportunities to view through the 60-inch. I know I spent the night up here once at a sleeping bag out there,
Right.
out at the outside of the rim.
So there are special programs. There's lectures that go on up here. There's concerts. There's all ways that the public can find, and you can find it on our website, mountwilson.edu. But you could also just rent the telescope on your own, and that's what I did. This is my night. I rented the telescope. It's you know, it's a sizable chunk. It's $1,200 to rent it. But you can bring 25 of your friends with you, and if everybody chips in, you know, $50, you got enough money to spend on food.
And that's how I got here tonight, because I said, you put the word out.
Yeah.
I said, it's been too long. I got to get back up to Mount Wilson. And then I realized, boy, this would be a cool thing to share with everybody.
Wow.
So here we are. I'm going to let you go deal with the telescope,
go
because
do
these
my
people,
thing.
They're waiting for you to point it at something else.
Well, let me see if I can point it to Saturn. So why don't you move on to somebody else for now while
I'm going to do that.
move the telescope.
Let me see if the Admiral is here. Yes, he is. Tim, come on over. So again, if you joined us late, we are at Mount Wilson, under the dome for the 60-inch telescope, once the largest telescope in the world. And we are now joined by, first thing I want to do is congratulate you on your promotion to Admiral Tuvac.
Thanks, it's Captain. I'll get to Admiral eventually.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Russ of Star Trek Voyager, many other things. I checked it out. I looked at your IMDb,
Okay.
found all those great roles
Very
that
cool.
you've gotten to play.
Very cool.
But I wonder, Amateur Astronomer, I think, must be one of your favorites.
It has been one of my favorites for about 35 years, actually.
Yeah.
That's when I started sort of the hands-on hobby of astronomy, and I wasn't necessarily inspired or motivated by someone in particular to do it. I just decided one day that I was going to go out and buy a small telescope and take it out to the dark skies and sort of get familiar with the constellations and the objects in them, and I just did it on my own.
But now you are one of these people who shares the experience. I know that you're a regular at the Griffith Observatory Star Party.
Yes, absolutely. Myself with the Los Angeles Astronomical Society, they're a really wonderful organization, and I've been with them for a number of years, and I really enjoy taking the scopes up and putting them on the front lawn with everybody else, and having the public be able to come up and view through them. You know, a lot of times the people come up and they don't know that they're able to look through them at all. They're just looking at us doing what we're doing, and they're thinking that they're not sure if they can or not. So when they ask and they're able to do it, they're thrilled to be able to do that. So
I want to point out, just as an aside,
yes,
the big scope is slewing around
Yes,
us. I went
it
back
is.
to the wide shot. You can actually see it moving, and the dome is moving.
yes, because the dome opening has to slew back as well
Yeah.
to wherever the scope is going. So it's going to have to swing all the way around.
We'll point a camera up there
Yeah,
later.
I think he might be going after Andromeda.
Well, he said he's going to try and get Saturn for us, even though it's early in the night for Saturn,
Yeah.
because we want to let our folks, our members who are watching in the member community, take a
Yeah,
look.
they should. It's coming up, so it shouldn't be too long now to be
Okay.
able to catch it. It might be a little low in the atmosphere, on the horizon, so you get a lot of atmosphere, so it might not be as sharp as it would. The best time to look at those objects are almost straight up or just at a 50-degree angle at least. so you're out of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're looking through a lot of garbage and stuff, so it's hard to focus, get a good sharp image on those.
I was talking earlier there are several astronomers here
Yes.
who do what you like to do when you go to those Griffith star parties.
Mhm.
They're really, because I've had the experience,
Yeah.
there is nothing like, particularly Saturn for some reason, showing that to somebody through a telescope for the first time.
It's magical, and the reaction you get from the public is complete disbelief. They think they're looking at a picture. You know, they accuse you of saying that's a photograph. That's a, you know, it's a beautiful, like just a complete, just black, inky black background, and this thing just pops out and it's just sitting there like on black velvet, and it's just remarkable to be able to see that, and they cannot believe they can see the rings. You know, and it's such a beautiful planet. It's like, you know, no other in our system that has those kinds of rings.
Yeah.
Other planets do have rings, but they're so faint you can't see them. But Saturn has these prominent rings, and they look so beautiful in the eyepiece. It's like a jewel on a black canvas background. It's just beautiful.
What was the first thing you saw through a telescope?
First thing out through a telescope was Saturn.
Yeah.
That was the first object that I saw, and that is what basically hooked me. It was amazing, and it was a very small telescope, so it wasn't a big image, but I knew it was Saturn, and to be able to see that through the eyepiece, which is key. It's all about the eyepiece. To see it through the eyepiece with your naked eye in the sky like that is, it's just wonderful, and it's still, even after so many years of looking at it, it's still a marvel to see it.
For me, I think I got to look through the big refractor at Griffith.
Yes.
When I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember that experience. It may have just been like a star cluster or something, because I know I really didn't see Saturn until my parents gave me a little cheap, like Sears Tasco 2-inch refractor.
Right.
And I was blown away. That was it.
If you get back to Griffith, you got to get up there and take a look when they're looking at Jupiter.
I'd love to.
That's the image. It's just spectacular.
So the first experience I ever had here with the 60-inch, we were celebrating Ray Bradbury's 80th birthday party at the Planetary Society.
Were you looking at Mars?
We were looking at Mars because it happened to be when Mars was at opposition, and Ray didn't come up the hill with us, but we spent half the night looking through this telescope.
Was
at
it
Mars.
during the close approach?
Yes.
17 years ago, roughly.
Yes, that has to be right.
It was amazing. Absolutely.
Were you
amazing.
here?
I was at
near
Griffith.
that?
I was at Griffith for that.
Okay.
I had a pretty good sized telescope at the time, and that was magnificent. It was, in a small telescope, you could see the features on the surface, which you just can't do unless it's that close.
Yeah.
But even with a small telescope in my backyard, I think after I left Griffith, I went home and threw up a small ETX 3.5-inch mirror, Max Sudoff, and looked at it, and I could see you could see Valles Marineris, you could see the detail on the surface, and that was absolutely magnificent.
I didn't have a decent telescope at home at that point, so thank God I got to come up here with one of my daughters, who was a little kid at the time.
It had to be stunning.
It was a blast.
It did be stunning.
Have you spent much time up here on the mountain?
No, this is my first time on the mountain.
No kidding.
I've been invited before many times. I couldn't make it up on those days. So I told Geo when he invited me, I said, I'm going to be up here this time. I'm going to make it tonight. So I did.
You know Geo through the LAAS?
Yep. And
Right.
Griffith, yes.
Los Angeles
Astronomical
Astronomical Society.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Which does all kinds of stuff, right?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
They go to schools.
Yeah, they go to schools, all kinds of outreach programs. And sometimes people will reach out to us and ask us to, come and bring all of our gear to one of their, star parties or their astronomy classes or something at the colleges. So we get invites every once in a while. Sometimes from Joshua Tree National Park, they'll do a big thing out there, and they invite us to come out with our scopes as well. So, yeah.
There are astronomy clubs all over the place.
Yes.
I've been to meetings of a bunch of them, and it's almost a competition sometimes. Guys and girls trying to get you to get over to their telescope there, because theirs is bigger, and let you see what they're seeing.
Yep.
But it's great fun because you can go from scope to scope.
The whole idea of having those kinds of things and allowing the public to see them with multiple telescopes is that you get, first of all, different objects, and in each, some of the scopes you get to see different things because people try to look at different objects, but you also see what they look like through those types of scopes. And if you are interested in starting the hobby, it's a perfect place
Yeah.
to get familiar with what type of gear is available and which one might be best for you to start with. See
Yeah.
how they work. Yeah.
The Trekkies out there would not forgive me if I didn't talk a little bit of Trek.
Yes.
I did hear we have someone here who actually is an astronomer, works with the Deep Space Network, and is now going through every one of the series, and forced her friend who's sitting next to her there to watch a Voyager episode. Who, you enjoyed it, right? Yeah. And I speak as a dyed-in-the-wool. I'm an original series guy.
Okay.
I go way back.
Okay.
My daughters used to have, I'm sorry, it wasn't your poster, it was a poster of Jerry Ryan, the 7 of 9 on their bedroom
That's
wall.
all right.
And it was wonderful to see you back now as Admiral Tuvok in Picard.
Yeah, they brought me back for the last couple of episodes of Picard, and it was a surprise to me. I was not expecting it. And they brought me back for, well, it was 2 of them, because the first episode that I was in, it looked like we weren't sure if Tuvok had survived or not, if anything happened to him. And then they brought me back for the last episode, showing obviously that I made it,
Yeah.
and being able to give Jerry Ryan a promotion. So it was very cool. It was a very cool thing to be able to participate in that show as a legacy character.
Yeah.
Come back. Yeah.
It was very cool to see you in that.
Yes.
Have you thought about, this is something that came up about a month ago when my colleague, Sarah Al-Ahmed,
Yeah.
who now hosts Planetary Radio, which I did for 20 years.
Right.
She and I were hosting a live stream like this for the member community at the NIAC Symposium, NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts.
Okay.
And they did this cool thing where they had the Hollywood Science Exchange, the guy who runs it showed up, and he had some producers, and one of them was, I think, a showrunner for Star Trek Discovery.
Mhm.
And I asked her, do you guys have in mind, because I said, most of these engineers and scientists who are at this conference, many of them will tell you that they are doing what they do professionally because they grew up on Star Trek, because they were inspired by Star Trek.
Right.
And I asked her, do you have that in mind as you are, coming up with good stories to tell on Star Trek Discovery?
Right.
In her case, was that something that you thought about as you were doing Voyager or since then? It has such cultural importance, Star Trek.
Well, from a cultural standpoint, Star Trek has always been about making a commentary on society, a reflection of what's going on, but in a metaphor, using aliens as a metaphor. In many cases, for the situations and also the confrontations and the communication with all of these different species, akin to communication with different cultures and ethnicities on our planet, and all the difficulties that we might have in terms of conflicts that go on and how we might resolve those conflicts without, peacefully.
Yeah.
And also to learn and discover, that what ideas we had about one thing may not be what we thought they were. So shaking up, those ideas and conflicts is really what that show has been about from day one.
And that's what Roddenberry wanted, right?
100%, it's telling stories. Let's compare it and contrast to our rival Star Wars, which is very popular, but it's basically a very linear bad guy type framework, rather than what Star Trek is, which is stories, lessons, morals, exploring characters, exploring difficult decisions that people have to make, sacrifices and things like that. It's really what that show is about. Always has been, always will be. Looking at things through a different lens and discovering, learning and discovering things about humanity. And that's what Trek is. It always has been.
And showing us a future where we seem to have resolved, not all, but most of the great problems that civilization has faced.
Indeed, 300-400 years from now, technologically, we will have come a very long way, and we may very well be a long-distance spacefaring, species at that time, obviously, if we survive. And so, it's a peek into that, because ultimately, I think, obviously, as they just, base what Trek tries to do, we will have to overcome a lot of issues that we have now in order to make it to that goal. Again, self-destruction is one of the main hurdles. We have to eliminate the potential for self-destruction. And until we reach that point, It's going to be a dice roll. So once we've gotten past that hurdle, then we go on beyond that into being able to live together, harmoniously, and also to put our energies into expanding our species beyond the boundaries of Earth, because that's inevitable for our survival as a species to go that way. Yeah.
I want to take you back to where I started, because really the greatest significance of Star Trek is what you've just described, but specifically the scientists, the engineers, the astronauts, the people who used to walk up to Gene Roddenberry and say, "You're why I'm an astronaut."
Yes.
And Martin Luther King, well, no, that's the cultural side again, telling Nichelle Nichols, don't you leave this job.
That show. Yes.
Yeah. But the scientists and engineers who were surrounded by them were inspired in large part by Star Trek.
Absolutely. And, and as it turns out, the scientists and engineers are the ones who and physicists tend to be interested and fascinated with the subject of science fiction in general, and Star Trek in particular. And I am no exception. I love science fiction. I always have since I was a child, and I think that's part of the reason why I pursued amateur astronomy on my own, and I still follow in space science. I keep up with what's current in terms of the discovery, and looking forward to the discoveries that are coming, that are pending.
Yeah.
Hopefully in my lifetime, some big discoveries.
Here, here.
So there definitely there's a symbiosis. There's a give and take on both of that. Of those things that Trek does appeal to scientists, and also scientists are inspired by Trek in many cases, especially space scientists. It's fascinating. I mean, it's a fascinating thing. The exploration of space is what that's about, and that's what Trek is about. The exploration of space. You really can't beat it. It's one and the same. It really is.
Last thing. Any words of wisdom for your colleague, Bob Picardo, our board member, friend of yours? You did a terrific video with him at the Griffith Telescope where you didn't recognize him after years doing Voyager together.
Do I have to comment on Bob Picardo? Oh, well. It's always good to see Bob. I got a chance to see him just recently at a convention, and he's always a lot of fun. He's a character. He's a card. Very witty, very quick, and it's been a pleasure to know him, and also to be able to join with him in the Planetary Society events whenever I get a chance to. I look forward to seeing him. I should be seeing him again very soon. I think later this month, perhaps, in San Antonio.
I would love to get the two of you together for an event like this in the member community. We'll try for that sometime.
Let's try for that indeed, yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to give you your chance to get up there and see fuzzy Saturn before it happens later tonight.
Yes.
This is always great to talk to you.
Very good to talk to you.
Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper. Peace and long life. Take care. All right, have a good
Tim Russ, everyone. Tuvok, Admiral Tuvok now, if you are a Picard fan. Geo, do we have a shot? Can we take a look at Saturn? Stick with us, folks. Oh, Tim, I forgot to tell you. We got a couple of comments here. One person, Robin, says, I'm impressed. Tim really knows his stuff. John Mason says, Tim was my favorite from Voyager. You want to try this? All right, I'm going to get up. I got to take off the headphones. You may not be able to hear me for a moment. I'm going to turn on your microphone. What are you doing? Oh, well.
So that's why we have 60.
So it's not. Yeah, go for it. It's not as sharp as we like it to be, but
Okay, there it is, sir. I turned on your microphone, I think. I'm going to go back over and make sure of that. You have lots of cable.
Are you better off handing it to me from here?
Why don't you, and hold it, do it landscape like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the best way.
But
And show us the telescope. I'll go back over to my mic. It's a one-man band, everybody. Let me flip the camera here. Oh, we lost one.
So are you on me now?
Shot. So I can kind of hear myself again now. Hey, Tim, would you do me a favor? Would you turn that camera a little bit more toward me? Better, thank you. That'll work. bad headroom, but all right, we're going to follow along with Geo as he heads up to the telescope. And Geo, talk to me. Let's see if I can hear you.
Yeah, oh yeah, look at this.
I can hear you well.
So we got the 60-inch telescope here, getting ready to go up the ladder and look at Saturn, which is way up there.
Climbing the ladder here. Got to get up to the eyepiece. No fooling around with video here. In a moment, if we're lucky, we will all catch. Oh my God, there it was. Holy cow. Geo, that is spectacular. That is spectacular. So as Geo said, it's still a little bit too early in the evening to have a really, really good view.
You see that little moon dot on the side?
I sure do. Well,
So-
which moons?
That one is Rhea. It's a little bit hard to see here, but Titan is down there too. And then there's Titan way down there. I don't know if you, there you go. That's Titan way off in the distance there.
Looks like a cloud. It's a cloudy day on Titan. Can you center it a little bit better? We're sort of in the bottom left corner. There you go. That's a little better. Oh, that is just spectacular. So it looks like we're almost in line with the ring plane.
Yeah, it's cutting along. So March of 2025, just a few months away from now, the rings will disappear, but we'll still see the shadow that's going across the planet right now. It's not very easy to see on the cell phone, but there's a nice shadow going there.
That it really is spectacular.
There you go.
Okay,
You're
that's a
seeing
little
it
better.
now.
Absolutely. I
There's
can
the
see
shadow. Oh, and you got enchilada, also known as enceladus down there. You see it right underneath the ring on the left?
it. I think I can see a plume. I'm joking.
Well, enchilada, one of my favorite moons, that's right there.
That is fantastic. Hey, come on back down and show us the whole telescope. And maybe you can walk us over to the control panel. So I'll switch back over here to me. There's a little bit of a shot. There is at least one more person that we're going to talk to
All right,
this
we
evening.
let somebody else go up there and look.
Sure. I want to get up there still. So Geo is walking across the floor of the dome.
So look at this. This is something you don't see very often. You see this little tub back here that's on the back end of the telescope?
Yeah.
That little tub is filled with liquid mercury.
Yeah.
It's filled with about 6 gallons of it. And so here is our measurement to make sure we haven't run out of mercury. And the telescope itself weighs 22 tons. And as it sits on top of that tub displaces 21.5 tons of the moving parts. And the telescope can just slide left to right on a liquid bearing of mercury right there on that tub.
That is a lot of thermometers.
Now, over here, look at this. This is the original panel to power up and open up the dome. And here are the original Edison light bulbs
Oh my God.
from 1908. Let me activate them for you.
They work? Oh my God.
Whoa!
Oh geez. Okay. Are they still under warranty?
No, if they break, I don't know what we'll do. But they're
All right.
working as resistors. So this is still DC power. So as the light goes through the light bulbs, it sort of cuts off the DC power a little bit, slows it down. But as these filaments warm up even more, eventually they let more power through. But gradually it starts to ramp up, and so the DC power doesn't hit quite as hard as it normally would. And then when I disengage the whole system, a green light bulb will jump up and try to kill me right here. But now we've invested these $5 on this piece of plastic to save my life. But you'll still see the green spark jump up and try to kill me right about.
Oh yeah, I saw that. So are you saying that's still functional? Is that just for show now? Or
That's
is
how
that...
I opened the shutter today, and that's how I'm going to close it later on tonight.
I'll be damned.
So
Okay.
every time we open and close the doors, the window to the world, that's how we open it up.
So show us the control panel. I think you got just barely enough cable there. And I would go to the other camera, but it's gone out of focus for some reason.
So this is where I sit and operate the telescope from. I use the big computer here to play music, so later on we'll be bumping up some jams. I have an infrared camera that tells me what people are doing in front of the telescope. And then I move the telescope from here, up, down, left, right, or right ascension, declination, however you like to think about it. I select my targets with my tablet. And then as I dial, the encoders have a built-in time of where we really are in our address. So right now we're at 2300 hours in right ascension address and -8 in declination.
Yeah, sorry about the mirror image, everybody, but we'll fix that before we do this again.
So that's what I do. I just sit here and find different targets and share that with whoever's with me.
Fantastic. All right, head back on over here, and we will. I'm going to pull out the other microphone here, so that I can move around a little bit and still
And I
be
get an
heard.
extreme close-up of him.
Scary kitties. Thank you so much, Geo. That was a wonderful tour. Okay, so I've got a different microphone on now. So I'm going to set that camera up again because we're going to invite over. You told me he is the resident astrophysicist here?
Yes, so he's a retired NASA astrophysicist. Tim Thompson, come on down.
Come on over, Tim. And I will try and get this on a decent shot. Whoop, we just lost this camera. Have a seat, Tim. Go right ahead.
What, right here?
I have to figure out what I did wrong here.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Bear with us, folks, while I try and get this working again.
Yeah, so like right now, it doesn't really matter.
Or we'll just go with one camera.
You might not see the last step. And that's when
Oh,
you'll-
my. I seem to have lost the camera.
Oh heavens. As soon as I sit down, the
You see it
camera
here?
is dead.
Oh, I just don't have it on the viewfinder for the iPhone.
Oh,
You might
hey,
have to
well,
get
just
a
set
little
it up
closer.
that looks like me.
Okay, I'm going to kill your microphone, Geo, and I'll make sure that people can see both of us. Yep, there we go.
Oh boy.
Not the greatest shot, but we do have the 60-inch, so I
Hey,
guess
well,
it's a good
yeah,
shot.
yeah.
So,
Can they hear me? Is my voice
They
going
sure
out over the
can.
world? Oh boy.
absolutely, yes. You were, remember, I was pretty sure I had seen you before,
Mhm.
and it was because something like, how many years ago, I came up with the family, the descendants of
Oh,
George
okay.
Ellery
yeah,
Hale,
Yeah, I remember that. That was, what was that, 5 years ago, 6 years ago? I can't remember. when
something
it
like
was.
that,
Yeah,
6
several
or
years
7,
ago,
yeah.
Hale family reunion. We had a Hubble family reunion up here once too.
Wow. So tell me about your job and what you do up here.
Well, what I do up here is generally talk too much, and I'm pretty good at it. My background is in physics. My bachelor's and master's degrees from Cal State LA, and I worked at JPL for 28 years, mostly in planetary science, radio astronomy, but physics is what really interests me. So anything that has to do with physics, I kind of poke around with it for a while. When I was a little kid, I was fascinated by maps, and especially weather maps. And so I actually subscribed to the National Weather Service. Every day I'd get a weather map, and I'd put the weather map out and lay down, look at the thing. Oh, hey, there's a thunderstorms over here, and a hurricane over there, and tornadoes over here. For some reason, violence, hurricanes, and tornadoes are what really interests me.
Of
Young
course.
boys, what do you expect?
Of course.
But I came up here 43 years ago as part of the Mount Wilson Observatory Association, which no longer exists, which was a volunteer organization working with Carnegie observatories to do this kind of thing, to do a volunteer service up here, clean up the grounds, lead tours. And so I was one of the first tour guides. I did lead the very first observing session on this telescope.
No
It was
kidding.
the first observing session. And it was for the Los Angeles Astronomical Society. I would just like to mention that we beat out the Orange County astronomers by 1 day.
This is an old rivalry, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and that was in 1998. I can't remember the date, but it was in 1998. So this telescope opened for public viewing then, and the 100-inch, I can't remember. I think the 100-inch has been open for public viewing quite a while, like 6 or 7 years. And it is the largest telescope in the world that people can come in and look through on a regular basis.
And Geo corrected me. He told me that that's the 100-inch now, but it used to be this telescope, right?
That's right. Before the 100-inch opened up, the 60-inch was. Although I think there was a large telescope, like an 80-inch at Kitt Peak, that was occasionally open, not regularly open, but they would occasionally open it. But this, we just open it up and say, okay, you want to rent time, and we'll get you a telescope operator and a session director like me, and we'll come up here and do it. So for regular observing like that, yes, this was the largest in the world before the 100.
But there aren't many telescopes of this scale where just regular folks can walk up to an eyepiece and have those photons hit their retina from Saturn.
As far as I know, that's certainly true. Not telescopes this big, because most of them are still involved in some kind of astronomical research. And these telescopes are also, but just not on such a regular basis. We have groups of high school kids mostly, and some college students. And I think Stellar is one group and Instar is another, and I can't remember. I'm probably insulting somebody by forgetting their name, but they come up and do what's called speckle interferometry, where they take very, very short exposures, like millisecond images of twinkling stars. And if you do that and you do all the right statistical manipulations and fool around with it, you can separate what would otherwise be spectroscopic binary stars that are too close to each other to separate. And in their last run, they very nearly reached the diffraction limit of the 100-inch telescope, around about 500ths of an arc second. And in doing so, accidentally discovered that one or two of their calibration stars, which are supposed to be individual stars, were actually double stars, and that's why they were having so much trouble with their statistics. Their standards were not as standard as they were supposed to be. So they discovered a couple of new binary stars, and they're coming back later this month, actually. On Halloween night, when the rest of you are out trick-or-treating, we will have people on the 100-inch doing speckle interferometry. High school students who maybe wish they were out trick-or-treating, I don't know, but
I don't know. They should realize how lucky they are to be up here doing that. There is another system of telescopes up here, right, that also does interferometry.
yes.
And there you see these pipes, these aluminum or something metal pipes, shiny metal pipes running across the property.
Yes, so it's called the Chara Array. Chara is an acronym. Stands for Center for High Angular Resolution Astronomy out of Georgia State University. If you're going to look at their building, you'll notice the word state is underlined in red, because when you say Georgia, everybody automatically says tech. And then the Georgia State people remind you that Georgia is a gun state, and then, okay, no, state. Honest, I said state. It's Georgia State University. It's the largest optical interferometer in the world, at least in the sense of making optical images. The LIGO interferometer is optical. It's in near infrared, and it's far larger, but it does gravitational waves. So, the optical people don't care.
LIGO being the
Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory.
Telescopes all over the world.
That's right.
That showed us that first image of a black hole.
That's right. No, that's the Event Horizon Telescope.
No, I'm talking about the gravity
waves.
observatory. The gravity waves. What am I talking about?
Gravitational waves, because gravity wave is a buoyancy wave in a planetary atmosphere. And I always correct people when they do that, because I studied gravity waves, not gravitational waves. So that there you are.
Thank you for the correction.
In any case,
I stand corrected.
The Chara Array is the largest of its kind in the world. There are 6 telescopes. The longest baseline between any two of them is 330 meters. And they will look at a star and they will just keep staring at it. And as the sky goes overhead, it rotates. And so because they have so many telescopes and 15 baselines connecting every possible pair, they can actually not just measure the diameter of a star, but get its shape and they can recover the brightness distribution across the surface of a star routinely. And they're the only instrument in the world that can do that. They just earlier this year received their 7th telescope. They're now characterizing it, working with it. They're going to transfer the pipes that you talked about, transfer the light from the telescopes to the beam combining room as a light beam. So a 5-inch beam moves down an 8-inch diameter pipe. And then all those beams come together in the beam combining room where they mix them all together. And that's where they do their interferometry.
I got to ask, are they traveling through there in fiber, or is it
No,
just, it's just a tube
it's
of
just
light?
a beam, a tube of light.
Wow.
But they are going to move it to fibers.
Oh.
Because the 7th telescope they have is portable. Not portable in the sense that you can just have some guys grab it and move it around, but you can hook it up to a truck and move it to another place and lock it down. And it will have a maximum baseline if they move it to their most distant location of 1 kilometer. And right now, the angular resolution of the array at its best is 200 micro arc seconds, for those of you who know what angular resolution is. If you make that baseline a kilometer, you're going to at least cut that in half, probably more.
So you're taking this group of, they're good-sized telescopes.
1 meter
but
aperture telescopes.
But they, because of the way the light is combined, you can make it in some ways act as if it was a kilometer-wide mirror.
That's right. So you synthesize an image using some kind of either direct or inverse Fourier transform, because I can never remember which is which. But in any case, it's one of those Fourier things. And you turn the interference pattern into an image.
So really, what this says to me is that even though this is a public facility, and it is also a public park, anybody can come up here and enjoy the view. And this was a particularly beautiful day to look out over, really, to the ocean across Southern California. But there is science going on up here still.
There certainly is, because the CHAR array is the best and largest in the world. And there is no other competition. Nobody else is actually trying to make anything like it at the moment. Somebody was, but it didn't work. And so we're already the largest in the world. And with the 7th telescope, it will be even larger than it already is. And so it'll be even a bigger telescope in the world.
We got to talk about the solar observatories up here as well. And I think there is a woman here.
Patricia Hill, yeah, she operates the
Patricia?
No, solar telescope.
I'm going to bring you in a moment, but so we can talk about what happens up here for looking at our own star, the one in our neighborhood. But before we do that, I hope you can talk a little bit about the guy responsible for creating all of this, George Ellery
The crazy
Hale.
man, yeah. Well, he wasn't really that crazy, but so George Ellery Hale was born in 1868. And when he was 2 years old in 1870, an American physicist named Homer Lane wrote the very first paper I'm aware of that attempts to actually physically describe the interior of a star, in this case, the sun. It's the first paper I've seen, oldest paper I've seen of its kind. He's real physics, real mathematics, the best he can do for modeling what the thermodynamics of the interior should look like, what kind of gas it should be. And so Hale was born 2 years before that. So physics, which we think of as a very mature science during the 19th century, was in the process of being born. James Clerk Maxwell came up with his theories of electromagnetism in the 1870s. And then at about the same time and a little later, as Maxwell and Boltzmann came up with thermodynamics and statistical mechanics. So this was all brand new stuff when Hale was growing up. And he was captivated by it, and he got his degree in physics from MIT. But his father was not filthy rich, but quite wealthy. His father made a killing in the hydraulic elevator market after the Great Chicago Fire, and that's when Chicago became a skyscraper town after the old one-story buildings burned down. And his father, George Ellery Hale's father, William Hale, I think, if I get his name wrong, they'll fire me. But okay, I'm trying to remember. But George's father required his son to write a proposal if he wanted Dad to give him anything. So 9-year-old George was forced to write a proposal for his new microscope. Why do you need a microscope? Why can't you use the one you've got? What are you going to do with it? What do you expect to learn with it? I don't even know if his father actually read it. He just wanted to make his kid do it. And he always did, for the rest of his life, he always did that. He's not going to give you anything until you explain in detail why. So he learned early on how to do that. But George was driven to accomplish things. He really was a type A focused personality on getting things done. And he became fascinated by the sun while he was a student. And his interest was in observing the sun. So his father built an observatory for him it was in the Kenwood suburb of Chicago.
Yeah.
Kenwood Observatory. It's just an observatory they built onto the family mansion. You know, my kid wants an observatory. It's a big building with a dome. And he had I don't remember what, maybe 12-inch refractor, and I can't remember what the size of the telescope was, a Brashear refractor. And he had invented, while he was a student, an instrument called the spectroheliograph, which for the very first time ever allowed you to image the sun in the light of a single spectral emission line. So he could see just hydrogen alpha or hydrogen beta, delta, gamma. So he did all this hydrogen images of the sun at Kenwood and gained a worldwide reputation for doing that. And so he was, 68, he was 24 years old when he became a full professor and the director of Yerkes Observatory in 1892 out of the University of Chicago. And it was not the largest telescope in the world, although everybody thinks it was, because the 48-inch Great Melbourne telescope in Australia, which was built in the 1860s, was bigger by 8 inches. But yeah, nobody used it because it wasn't all that good. And I hope I'm not insulting anybody from Melbourne, Australia.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, but that must have led him, and pardon me for accelerating.
I talk too much very well.
Well, it's because
so it's okay.
we should do an hour and a half just on Hale, this fascinating character who enabled so many other wonderful characters like Edwin Hubble to do the work that they accomplished here on top of the mountain. But I mean, here he was, a solar astronomer, and yet he was responsible for, in sequence, building 3 of the largest telescopes in the world.
Not only that, so the Yerkes telescope was certainly the most effective, even if it wasn't the largest. Everybody used it, and they didn't use the Australian telescope. Then the 60-inch telescope here replaced it. Then the 100-inch replaced the 60th, and the 200-inch replaced that.
Yeah.
But here on this campus at Mount Wilson Observatory, we have 3 solar telescopes, each one of which was the largest of its kind in the world when it was built. The 60 and 100-inch telescope, each one of which was the largest of its kind in the world when it was built. So on this campus, we have 5 telescopes that were the largest in the world when they were built. No other observatory in the world has more than 2 on their campus that was the largest in the world, and only one has accomplished that, and that's the Keck Observatory on Hawaii, because as you may recall, they built their 2 10-meter telescopes simultaneously.
Yeah.
So nothing like what happened here happened anywhere else. And those 5 telescopes, each one of which was the largest in the world, were built over 13 years, from 1904 to 1917. You can't build one large telescope today in 13 years. He built 5. And he built the 60-inch and the 60-foot tower simultaneously. When this mirror was being placed, the 60-inch mirror was being placed in this tube. It didn't even work yet. Nobody knew. The telescope was not working. It didn't have a mirror yet. They were just putting it in. On that same day, simultaneously, the 100-inch mirror blank arrived in Pasadena. He was going on to the 100-inch.
He was topping himself even as he was
That's
putting.
Right. He was just going and not stopping.
And eventually, the 200-inch, which he sadly didn't survive to see first light.
That's right. And maybe if World War II hadn't intervened, he would have. But he passed away in 1938, as I recall. But one of his talents, as you alluded to, was the ability to see talent in other people. So George Ritchie, who designed and managed the building of this telescope, was a high school shop teacher and a cabinet maker, and probably nobody ever would have heard of him, except George saw him at work and realized, look at the way that guy works. I want somebody like that working for me. And so he hired him, and he became one of the most famous telescope makers in the world, which might not have happened. Hubble was bound and determined to become famous. Hale recognized his talent, but Hubble, actually did a throwaway PhD thesis because he was so anxious to get into World War I, like every other young man. He couldn't run there fast enough, and he went to Europe but didn't get into action. But Hubble was a star athlete, and he is, in fact, in the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. You'll find Edwin Hubble because he led high school basketball teams to state and conference championships.
And somewhere along the line, he developed an English accent, even though he wasn't British.
He went to Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar, and I have been told by people from Oxford that everybody who goes to Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar does that. They all learn to speak British. Hubble evidently never stopped speaking British.
Yeah, so I'm told.
And so,
I got some pictures to show you. And then we're going to bring, I think you said it's Patricia over.
Patricia Hill.
Some of these, I mean, there is Mount Wilson.
Yeah.
There is the observatory. Hopefully everybody can make that out. And I'm just going to go through these manually. And here's the guy we've been talking
That's
about.
George Ellery Hale.
And here is, whoops, are we going to get there or not? I don't know what happened there. Why isn't it switching? I'm clicking on it. Oh, I know why. Give me a moment here, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to get around this to be able to get to where we want to be.
As you can see, George Ellery Hale was a handsome man.
Yeah, I'm going to have to try and do that again. Sorry, everybody. That was, I thought we were going to be able to share it. Let me give that one more try.
George Ellery Hale was a motorcycle rider, and when the city of Pasadena got its first motorcycle cops, he didn't know it, and when they came up next to him, he thought they wanted to race, so he hit the speed bars. They chased him and arrested him and fined him for speeding on his motorcycle in downtown Pasadena. Probably the first arrest by the Pasadena Motorcycle Police.
So there's the 60-inch mirror.
Yeah, that looks like it.
And here, you got to say something about this.
This is the optical tube assembly for the 60-inch telescope coming up the mountain in one piece. This truck was made by a company called Couple Gear in Chicago, and it's a hybrid. It has a gasoline engine,
Sure.
gasoline engine that drives a generator that provides electric power independently to each wheel.
Wow.
Each wheel can move backwards or forwards. It's actually a technology that comes out of Porsche. Porsche
No
has
kidding.
done this before.
And it's a hybrid.
Yeah.
That we would know it as a hybrid. And it's even
Yeah.
more of a hybrid because it also has mules.
Yeah, it can handle the flat parts of the road, but the uphills it needs the mule. And so the rear axle is steerable. You might be able to see the guy steering it in the rear.
Wow. And that road looks...
And this also has 1908 power steering because there are two steering wheels connected with a chain drive like a motorcycle chain and two guys. So 1908 power steering is two guys instead of one, right?
Let's see what I got here next. This is pretty amazing. It's an axle?
That is one of the floats. That's in the tank that's full of mercury over there that the telescope is sitting on.
Geo told us about.
That's a float that's in the tank of mercury.
Absolutely amazing.
And that looks like a galaxy, probably M31.
It is M31,
Okay.
indeed.
Hey,
And
I can still recognize something.
I still have this image.
Oh, that's
which is much
Saturn.
more
That is
recent.
not one of our old Mount Wilson images of Saturn. That's a nice modern image of Saturn.
But also from here, I'm told.
That could be. I don't
Yeah.
recognize it, but lots of people come up here and image Saturn, and there's no reason why not.
I'm going to shut off that thing that we were doing there.
Mhm.
I want to bring in that, you said Patricia?
Yeah, Patricia.
Because
yeah.
she's in charge of one of those solar telescopes,
She,
right?
She runs the Snow Solar Telescope.
Thank
And
you
she
so
owns
much.
it and protects it, and if you threaten it, she'll kill you.
I don't blame her. Let me see if I can pull her over.
I'll
Patricia,
drag her over.
thank you very much, Tim. Okay, we're going to make one more visit here with the last person that we'll be talking to because of the other role. Pull right on in here, right up to that microphone. And because all I've heard so far is Patricia, introduce yourself
Oh, I am Patricia Hill.
and lean in here.
I'm Patricia Hill. I operate the Snow Solar Telescope here at Mount Wilson, and it is the founding telescope.
So most of us grow up, I'm an LA kid,
Mhm.
knowing about the optical telescopes that worked at night up
Yes.
here.
Yes.
But as we just heard,
Yes.
George Ellery Hale was a solar astronomer, as are you.
Yes. This was founded as Mount Wilson Solar Observatory. So the first 3 scopes that went up were solar scopes. And then the 1908, when the 60-foot went up, this telescope also went up. But yeah, from the time Hale was a child, he wanted to know what the stars were made of, being a smart and logical child who focused on the sun. So he was always primarily a solar astronomer. When he left Mount Wilson, he stepped down in 1923 as director, but he went to Pasadena and built a 150-foot solar telescope close to the family home. And that is now called the Hale Solar Lab. It's privately owned.
And in his home, I was able to visit it once. And there is this huge shaft
Yeah,
that goes down, and that was his own private solar telescope.
yeah.
Why do solar telescopes, right on through the one that opened not long ago in Hawaii, the
Mhm.
Inouye
Mhm.
National Solar Observatory, I think,
Yeah.
why do they look so different from like the 60-inch that's behind you here?
Well, in the case of Mount Wilson solar telescopes, our telescopes are using big mirrors, as are our reflectors. But for the snow, it's horizontal. So that's a huge deviation from the standard telescope design. And then our towers are taller. So just the design is different. The optics are different. Now, by definition, both the 60-foot and 150-foot are refractors because they have, all 3 solar telescopes have coelostats, the 2 mirrors at the top, where you catch the sun, the bottom tracks the top. But the snow is all mirrors. The only lens I have is a litro above the spectrograph. But the 60-foot and 100-foot, the second flat, the top flat, feeds through an objective lens up top. So
Wow.
by definition, those are both refractors.
The snow,
Yes.
which stands for,
The snow is called the snow because a woman named Helen Snow paid for it.
Oh, okay.
And she wanted to honor her father. So the snow was originally at Yerkes. Around 1902 is when it was first built. And then it came to Mount Wilson in 1904. The original primary mirror burned in a fire at Yerkes. So that's the only part of this telescope that is not original. But it's still 120 years old.
I mentioned the Inouye. I've
Yes.
also spent time at the Big Bear Solar Observatory,
Yeah.
not too far from here in the San Bernardino
Yeah.
Mountains. It seems like, especially when you include spacecraft like the
Yeah.
Parker Solar Probe,
Yes.
that we know so much more now about our star and by extension other stars.
Yes.
Do we still have a lot to learn?
I think there's quite a bit to learn. I mean, the sunspot cycle, the magnetic reverse of polarities is still not completely understood. So I think there's still a lot that can be learned. What makes Mount Wilson to me so powerful is when Hale founded Mount Wilson, very little was known about anything. They knew about sunspots. They had no idea that they were cooler than other areas. They had no idea they were caused by magnetic fields. So the things discovered here were really the basics of what we then have built on. So to me, Mount Wilson is really magnificent in its simplicity in a way. Yeah.
Why did you choose to become a solar astronomer?
I think it chose me, quite honestly. I came up here Sunday, May 6, 2018 for a concert in the 100-inch. And like everyone, I mean, everyone loves to look at the sky, but I had no real astronomy background. So I'm very much learning still every day. And my background is film and art and education. So I walked in and I thought, and then they opened the dome and that was it. I was just a goner. I fell in love with the mountain. I fell in love with the telescopes. I was very fortunate to have a former film colleague who was a trustee. He's now our chief operating officer. And I said, oh my God, do you need volunteers? Oh, yeah. And that was Sunday. I got an email Tuesday. We think you're a good fit for the snow.
Oh,
So I used to operate big camera systems for special effects. And I shot many, we called them star BGs, star backgrounds. So when, just multiple passes of stars. So when I see a globular cluster, it's just nirvana because that's the real thing.
Well, you said film and art background.
Mm-hmm.
There is something about, even when we were looking at fuzzy Saturn,
Yeah.
and I hope people who are joining us from home right now
Mm-hmm.
have the same sense.
Yeah.
There is something, it's sublimely beautiful.
It really is.
And I think the surface of stars,
Yeah.
especially our own, because
Absolutely.
it's so much closer,
Yeah.
it's almost hypnotic watching movies
Yeah.
of the surface of our own star.
Yeah, it's incredible. We have a little H alpha telescope. So that's, of course, looking at a different layer. And that's a whole other experience. But if I see sunspots, I'm in heaven. I love sunspots. And I have a little reflector at my house. I rarely look at night. I look at sunspots. So I think some of us are solar observers. Some of us are night observers. I'm a solar observer.
But all driven by the same thing, I think.
Yeah. Oh, absolute passion.
Okay.
Mount Wilson hooked me completely.
Yeah, I had the same impression, but it was at Griffith Observatory.
Yeah.
And I got to get back to Palomar too, because that is just a temple for me.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, so I'm really very new to this. I've been operating the SO for 6 years, but I have so much to learn, and that's part of what's exciting to me, because I get to learn from amazing people up here.
Last question, where were you for the total solar eclipse in April?
I was in my hometown of Norwalk, Ohio. It was cloudy all week. We were in a panic. That morning, everything cleared. It was amazing. And then I was so excited, I called Steve in the 150-foot tower here, and they were having a big party and eating food, and he put me on the phone, and I just said, oh my God, oh my God. So yeah, it was amazing. Where were you?
I was in Texas, in Central Texas, at our Eclipse-orama that
Yeah.
we did for the Planetary Society with hundreds of other people, and we had the same experience, cloudy, 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 beautiful eclipse.
I was with my two older sisters, neither of whom are scientists or into astronomy, and my middle sister had to be convinced to go outside, but the next day she said, I really like that eclipse. I want to do that again.
Yeah, I'll tell you a secret, that same experience with my wife.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
She's ready now to go to Spain.
yeah, or Egypt.
Yeah, yes, or Egypt. Thank you so
You are
much
most welcome.
for sharing this. And,
My pleasure.
you know, clear skies, I guess that makes a
Absolutely.
difference for people who observe during the day as well.
Yeah, well, when I have clouds and then I look at sunspots, one of the most fun things in the snow is when you have sunspots with a layer of clouds floating over it.
Oh.
Beautiful. As we say, keep looking up.
Yeah, keep looking up and clear skies. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Listen, I think we're going to wrap this up because it has been a little over an hour now. It has been great fun. You have seen people behind us having a great time here on Mount Wilson. As always, we will make the recording of this live event, live for you, our members, available on the website and on YouTube in our very popular YouTube channel, increasingly popular. So tell your friends if you want to share this with them, and we'll try to have it up there within a few days, hopefully by the middle of next week, if not sooner. Those of you who have joined us for this, thank you. I'm sorry, because I've been entirely on my own, I haven't had much chance to take a look at the chat, but I do thank you profusely, not just for tuning in tonight, but for the support that you provide as members and donors and making this kind of stuff popular. Let us know if you'd like to see more live events originating from fantastic locations like this one underneath the 60-inch telescope dome on Mount Wilson, high above Southern California. I'm Mat Kaplan. Thank you, everybody, for again, for joining us. And we will see you again soon. In fact, we will see you very soon for our semi-annual policy update here in the member community. Check the event space or channel here in the member community, and you can learn all about that when I will be joined by my colleagues, Jack Curley and Casey Dreyer. Until then, good night, everybody, and sure enough, clear skies.